Hello everyone. Today I am going to discuss about synchronized block. In the previous lecture we have covered what is synchronized method, where we can use the synchronized method, what are the advantage, what are the disadvantage, what will happen if I don't use the synchronized method, and if I use the synchronized method we have seen in previous lecture. So in this lecture I am going to discuss about the synchronized block in multi-threading. Why we go for synchronized block, what are the advantage, disadvantage, where we can use the synchronized block. So first of all, we have already synchronized method. Is there need any other synchronized block? Why we need synchronized block? How do I declare synchronized block? Because we have already synchronized method. Why go for the synchronized block? What is the advantage of synchronized block over synchronized method? So before that, let me take a small analogy that you can people able to understand easily. Suppose, assume there are two bomb blasts in Calcutta, Park State area. Okay, that's why no flight is allowed to start from Newark City. Then the people will ask, "Are what happened? Why the flight is not allowed to start from Newark? You man, you don't know? There is a two bomb blast in Calcutta, in India." Oh. So next, it also happened that there is no city bus allowed to start from London also. No city bus allowed. Then the London people will ask why city bus is not starting. So it may be there is no train start from Sydney, maybe. So why the people will ask that? So this type of programming practice is a back programming practice, back programming style. The people are going to laugh, sure, really. If the bomb blast happened in Kolkata, then why we block the not only block the Kolkata, why why the city bus is not allowed from London? Why the flight are not allowed to start from New York City? Why the train is not going to start from Sydney? That's a bad programming style if I compare with our programming style. So but very unfortunately most programmers are doing this type of programming practice. Now if I compare with our analogy in technical term, suppose we have a method. Okay, suppose we have a method. The name of the method is, for example, M1. I have a method and we have a 10,000 line within this method. So we have a 10,000 line within this method, for example. Okay, but what will happen if some modification is required? For example, only 10 line code are required, sensitive code which are required to update. Only 10 line. Okay, 10 line code. So now in the database. So why the people are always try to solve this problem? They always try to synchronize the entire method. Okay, so what will happen? The solution is this method will be synchronize. So synchronize public synchronize M1, then 10,000 line, then finish the method. So this database operation, compare with this one. If there is only bomb blast happening in Calcutta, there is no need to block the city bus in London. There is no question about the flight, whether it will be start from New York or not. There is no question. But look at this. If I compare with this scenario, that we have a method that is HAM1. If 10,000 line is inside a method is want to access, only within 10,000 line, only 10 line is a sensitive code or database code that is used for update purpose. So why not block only 10 line? Okay, this database perform operation requires only one thread at a time, only 10 line, one thread at a time. So why we not block the 10 line only? Why we block the entire synchronize method? That is my question. So if 10 line code is need to synchronize, but if synchronize 10,000K, then what will happen? If I don't synchronize the 10 line code, if I just only synchronize 10,000K line, what will happen? If somebody, suppose there are this method is accessed by M1 is my method, and this method will be accessed by suppose T1 thread. Okay, so the method is synchronized. So what will happen? When the method will be accessed by T1 thread, no other thread will be allowed it. Yes or no? It's right. We have already seen that. So T2 thread also waiting state, T3 thread also waiting thread. If multiple thread is going to access the M1 method at a time, so both T1 will be in waiting state and T3 also be in waiting state, right? So they has to put in their waiting state. So if I block the entire 10,000 code, 10,000 line of code or entire method, what will happen? The T2 will be in waiting state, T3 will be waiting state, right? So means the performance is going to down. If 10 number line need to synchronize, but if I synchronize the 10,000K line, 10,000 line, then the performance is automatically going to decrease. Why? Because the most of the thread which are going to access this method is going to in waiting state. If very few line code required to synchronize, then it is never recommended to use the synchronize the entire method. Better we will go for the synchronize block. You can compare. If there is a problem in Kolkata, so we need to block this area, only Kolkata. Okay, so this is the actual requirement of synchronized block. If I have a small or few line of code is required to synchronize, then only we will go for the synchronized block. And if I need the entire 10,000 line or entire method needs synchronize, then we can go for the synchronized method. That is the difference between synchronized block and synchronized method. Because unnecessarily, if I block the entire method, then the performance will be low. Because number of thread in waiting queue, and they has to wait more time in their waiting state, so performance will be decreased. Now how do I declare? So actually, if I want to declare this synchronize, I have to use the synchronize this. This is the current implicit object, because I want to block this object, and within this line I have to execute only 10 lines here, 10 lines, and remaining line in M1 method, remaining line will be accessed by multiple thread. Suppose they have a the remaining line will be accessed by multiple thread. This portion of the also accessed by multiple thread, right? So only 10 line is required for sensitive data. So 10 line is required for synchronize. So when we are going to use the synchronize, we will synchronize the current object. Synchronize the block on current object. Synchronize the block on current object. That means if any thread is want to access the synchronized block, first you have to get the lock on current object. So that's why synchronize this. Okay, and all the remaining part within this method also will be accessed by multiple thread at a time. So what will happen? So if I use synchronized block instead of synchronized method, then the performance will be automatically increased. So that is the biggest advantage. The performance by default will be increased because the thread are not required to wait in waiting state much time, because 10th line is execute time is very less compared to 10,000 line. Obviously, if I compare with the 1 lakh lines and only 10 lines, that's required the small amount of time the every thread has to wait. But if I block the entire code, or if I use the synchronized method, then obviously the performance will be increased. That is one. So we can think as if when I declare the synchronize as a method, that means it's a global declaration. It's a global declaration. But when we declare the synchronized block, we can think as a local declaration. So global declaration means the entire block will be every thread has to wait to get the lock. But when we are going to use small amount of time, synchronize block, then small amount of time every thread has to wait in their waiting state. That is the difference between synchronized block and synchronized method. And we know that if I use synchronized method, then unnecessarily, we always say that unnecessarily, if 10,000 line is required to block or need to block the entire method, which is very important because those line are in this method are very important line, performing update, delete, any manipulation operation, then it is obviously highly recommended to use the synchronized method. But if only a few lines is required to for update operation, so it is highly recommended to use synchronized block, right? So the next question is, how do I write, or how can I declare the synchronized block? So first we have to know that in this sense we can write that whenever a thread is going to access the synchronized block, first things you have to get the lock of current object. So first is to get a lock of current object. What I have to write? To get a lock of current object. So first, to get a lock on current object, how can I declare? Synchronize. We use synchronize keyword. After that, within first bracket you can write this, then block of code. So only this block of code will be accessed by this part of the area of the code will be accessed by this thread if the a thread lock on current object, then only it will be allowed to access this code. If any thread got the lock of current object, then this part of the code will be accessed by this thread. And second way, we can declare to get I don't want to lock the current object. Suppose I want to lock a particular object, because I always not depend on the current object. I want to block other object also. So to get a lock of lock particular object, for example B, particular object, for example name of the object is B. So what will happen? I will simply write the B. Synchronize, then within bracket I will write B, then this is my block. If any thread want to access this synchronized block, then you have to get the lock on this object B. If the thread got the object lock of object B, then only it will allow to access this part of the code. And third one, if I don't want to lock a particular object, if I want to get the class level lock, that means in last example we have also seen that sometimes it is required not only the object lock, we also require class level lock, because in last example in display class we have seen that if more than two object D1 and D2, then we will get the irregular output, even the block is synchronized, even the method is synchronized. So what was the solution at that time? The solution was we have to get the class level lock. That was the solution. So suppose I want to class level lock. So what we will written? We will write, so to get class level lock, so we have seen there are three types of synchronized block, we can say, or we can say there are three ways we can declare synchronized block: synchronize on current object, synchronize on particular object to a specific object, and if we want to synchronize to get a class. For example, in this in our example last class we had seen that we had a class in display class. So suppose I want to get the lock of display class, what will happen? We have to write synco. What I need to do? We need to do the synchronize block. Okay, synchronize. Then we have to write the class name. For example, here in this example, display is my class name. So class dot class, right? Then synchronize block. So any thread want to get a class level lock. So if this is the signature of a synchronized method, then what will happen? Synchronize block. Then what will happen? First we have to get the class level lock. So nothing but is a class lock, right? So we can get the data. Okay. So now come to the, so we have seen that there are three way we can declare synchronized block, and we have also seen what is the purpose of synchronized block. When the number of line is very few, then we can go for synchronized block. Now consider a practical example. So I am just taking the simple example what I have covered in the last lecture. Last lecture we have taken a class name, that is display. So I am taking the same class name and try to modify the content so that you can understand it very well. So the class name is class display. You already know that this is my class, and within this class we have a public void view method. With this method I have to pass a string, that is string name as an argument, and within this method we have a, suppose within this method we have a 10,000 line, right? So we can write also, for example, we have a not 10,000, we have a suppose 1 lakh line, okay. And after that we have a for loop for int I equal to 0, I less than 10, I plus plus. Within this for loop, I have a system dot as a message dot print, not println, print good morning. That was our original example in the last lecture. Okay, after that we need to call a sleep method, so that we can understand the output in very well how it is working. We can demonstrate, and 2000 millisecond, so that means 2 seconds. Then try catch block is started. Interrupted exception, i.e. you have to write the full, I am just writing in short. Interrupted exception, for example, exception name is E. Then you have close the block, and after that we have print system dot out dot println the name which has been passed through this method, and then we close the for loop, and then we have a another 1 lakh line is available. Okay, so 1 lakh lines. Line of code. Okay, I have to you block this public void view method. We have to block the end method. Now compare with this one. So earlier we have a same class, but here only modification is needed for. Let me explain with this one, because suppose I want to call with the help of a thread. So this part of the block will be executed by a child thread. So that was my original. We can compare with this. I am not writing here again and again. So I have a class that is named class my thread extend thread. Then you have created an instance of display class D, string name my thread. Within we have a, this is my constructor. Within constructor I have passed display D and string name. So this dot D equal to D, this dot name equal to name. Then we have called public void run. That means we have override the run method, and we this method will call D dot view. And this is my synchronized demo class. First we have within the public static void main we have created display D equal to new display and my thread T equal to new my thread. Then we have passed a argument D comma Dhoni, and we have passed another thread is going to access this method. We have to use new thread D comma Juvaraj and T1 dot start, T2 dot start. So what will happen? So we will get regular output or irregular output. Same object, but I have not used any synchronized, so we will get the regular output. Then we have seen if I want to use this block as a synchronized. This block is as a synchronized. We have done this block as a synchronized to get the regular output, right? We got this regular output. Now come to the questions. If there is a 1 lakh line is available in this method, if multiple thread is going to access this 1 lakh lines, so there is no problem. But only modifications is done within this for loop, right? Within this for loop. So only this is the valuable code, right? So if I block only this this part of the code only for loop, then the performance will be increase. Otherwise, if I block the entire method, view method, then the performance will be low. So what is the sensitive code here? Which part of the loop we need to block? We only need to block this part that only one thread is going to access at a time. That is this part for loop, because only modification done in this loop. Okay. So I will use synchronize. I will write this block synchronize, then synchronize, then this. Within this I have to use the block statement, opening second bracket, and we have to block here. So that is the solution if I use the synchronized block. So I will write synchronize synchronize this, and we block the important code which are going to modification frequently. Or with that we can secure that no more than one thread is going to access this part of the code without a lock. So what will happen if any thread is want to access, suppose T1 is going to access, this view method, but he can access, that thread can access the one lakhs line after this 1 lakhs line also, but whenever he want to enter in this block, he has to get the lock of this object. At a time T2 also perform the 1 lakhs lock, at a time simultaneously T1 also performing within this lock. So one more thing we have to conclude here, that whenever we are going to use a particular small or few line of code which are very important, which are relating to any database updation, so we will go for the synchronized block. But whenever the number of line or number of code is much more compared to the other one, then we will go for the synchronized method. So if I use synchronized block instead of synchronized method, then the performance will be increased, because no more thread is a waiting state, not no waiting state much more. So every thread has to wait for a small amount of time, because the number of code is very small. Okay, number of code is block. So what is synchronized block? So synchronized block can be used to perform the synchronization on the specific resource of the method. I am not talking about the entire method. I am talking about the specific specific resource of a method. That is the ultimate discussion of synchronized block. And so here some of the few important question. What is synchronized block? This is a very important question for your exam. Then the question is how to declare the synchronized block to get the lock of current object. You already know that. How to declare the synchronized block to get the class level lock. How to declare the synchronized block to get the lock of a particular object. We have already seen that. Sorry. What are the advantage of synchronized block over synchronized method? This question is very important. So what is synchronized block? That is very important. And what are the advantages of synchronized block over synchronized method? We already explained that. What are the advantages? And the next question is there a thread? That is a very interesting question. Is there a thread get can acquire multiple locks simultaneously? Is it possible? Of course it is possible. Suppose I have a class. Okay, so I have a class. So class name is X, for example class X. Okay, and we have another object, for example of the class, for example y equal to new y. So another class object is here, y is the reference. So then we have a synchronized block. Synchronize object of this class, so I have to get the lock of y, no problem, right? And within that, suppose I want to create a new object z, small z equal to new z, yes, then we have another synchronized block. Synchronize z on this object. So what will happen? So let me close this synchronized block, let me close this method also. So let me take a method public, within this method public synchronize void m1. So within this method, this block is complete, this block is complete, this method block is complete, and class is complete. Now look at that, here the method is synchronized. So if any one thread want to get the execute this method, first we have to get the lock. So here lock of X object is required. So here only one X object is required, lock of X object is required. Then again suppose here, so if I want to execute the y, so that means here this part of the code to execute, this part of the code execute, lock of x and y is required, right? And within z, suppose these are the code, if this code want to execute, so here lock of x, y and z required. So we can see that with the help of synchronized block, we can, a thread can get multiple lock simultaneously from the different object, but multiple lock get the simultaneously but different object, right? So that is the explanation answer of this question. Is there a thread get can acquire multiple locks simultaneously? So that is the answer. And the next is, what is synchronized statement? Actually there is no synchronized statement in Java. According to some people, the statement present in synchronized block is called synchronized statement. Okay, so that means there is no actual term. So any statement which are present in the synchronized block, that is called synchronized statement. That's all about the synchronization. So we have already discussed the synchronized method, synchronized block. We have also explained so many important questions for your exam also. That's all about your thread synchronization in multi-threading. Thank you.